If you own a Nintendo Switch and you're into exploring massive interconnected worlds, unlocking new abilities, and getting completely lost in a game for hours, this video is for you. Mio, Memories in Orbit. So you wake up as Mio, a little robot aboard a massive, decaying spaceship called the Vessel, and you have no idea what's going on, and honestly, neither does she. The ship was built to carry humans to some promised land, but the humans are gone. The AI caretakers called Pearls have basically lost their minds, and everything is overgrown and falling apart. Your job is to travel through 5 distinct zones of the ship and convince each Pearl to work together again before the vessel shuts down forever. The world is seamless, no loading screens between rooms, and you've got a 3D camera you can rotate to peek behind objects and find hidden paths. Movement feels really good. You've got a grappling hook, wall climbing, gliding, and a dodge that snaps really satisfyingly. Combat uses a module system where you swap abilities rather than stacking permanent upgrades. Crypt Custodian. You play as Pluto, a black cat who just died, showed up in the afterlife, accidentally broke some statues, and got sentenced to clean the underworld forever. Classic cat behavior, honestly. The game plays from a top-down perspective. Think more Zelda than traditional Metroidvania, but the exploration, map unlocking, and ability progression are all very much in that spirit. Pluto fights with a broom, sweeping enemies around and charging up a special attack meter, and you can build your loadout with passive abilities you find or buy from other ghost animals you meet along the way. The afterlife here is a weird, colorful place. Broken amusement parks, bioluminescent fish graveyards, foggy marshes, all filled with quirky animal spirits who have their own little stories and problems. The real goal isn't just cleaning, it's making friends and finding a way back into the palace.
SteamWorld Dig 2. Dorothy, the protagonist, is searching for Rusty, the hero of the first game who's gone missing, after a series of mysterious earthquakes started shaking up the world. To find him, she drills down through underground caverns, collecting resources, selling them for cash, and using that cash to upgrade her gear and dig further. The further you go, the more abilities you unlock: a jetpack, a hookshot, bombs, and the world opens up in classic Metroidvania style. The trick is that digging itself creates your path, so every run underground feels like you're carving out your own route through the map. The challenge spikes hit at the right moments, especially the jetpack section, which absolutely made me sweat. The characters are charming, the humor is dry and fun, the upgrade loop is super satisfying, and the whole thing is polished to a shine. Animal Well. You wake up as a tiny pink blob in a dark underground well filled with strange animals: deer, cats, ostriches, jellyfish, and the game drops you in with zero explanation, zero combat, and zero hand-holding. There's no traditional fighting here. Instead, you solve your way through the environment, using items like a yo-yo, a slinky, firecrackers, and a bubble wand, each of which interacts with the world in multiple unexpected ways. The map is dense and intricate, and exploration is about puzzles, pattern recognition, and figuring out how everything connects. But here's what makes Animal Well special. It has layers. The first layer is the Metroidvania part: collect items, unlock areas, reach the end. The second layer is a puzzle hunt where you're tracking down hidden eggs using knowledge you've gathered from the world itself. Castlevania Advance Collection. 5 games in one package, this collection bundles together Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, and Dracula X. 4 Game Boy Advance entries and 1 SNES title. And it's basically a time capsule of when Castlevania was at its absolute peak as a genre. These games are the reason Vanya is in Metroidvania. You explore Dracula's castle, fight iconic monsters, collect gear, level up, and unlock abilities that let you reach new areas. The standout is Aria of Sorrow, where protagonist Soma Cruz can absorb the souls of enemies he defeats, turning each kill into a potential new power. Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance lean harder into the RPG elements. The collection also adds a rewind feature, save states, and a music player, so they're way more accessible than they were in 2001. Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. You play as Jin, a young guy whose uncle has cast a curse on the kingdom, transforming all its citizens into animals. Jin himself gets transformed along the way, and gains the ability to switch between different monster forms: a pig, a frog, a snake, a lion, and a dragon, each with unique abilities that unlock different parts of the world. The pig can dig, the frog can use a tongue grapple, the snake can slither through small gaps, and so on. The exploration is tied directly to which form you're using in each situation, so it constantly makes you think about what you have available. There's also gear to collect, spells to learn, and puzzles that mix the forms in clever ways. The art is genuinely some of the best you'll see in a 2D game. Fluid, expressive, colorful, and the world design feels handcrafted with real care. The Messenger. The movement is excellent. You get a cloud step mechanic that lets you extend your jump by hitting enemies mid-air, which makes traversal incredibly fluid and satisfying. The 8-bit aesthetic switches to 16-bit when you pass through portals to the future, which is both a cool visual trick and an actual mechanic. And then about halfway through, it reveals itself as a full Metroidvania, where you revisit every level in any order, using time travel between eras to manipulate the layout of each area and uncover hidden paths. The writing is genuinely funny. The shopkeeper who sells you upgrades has some of the wittiest dialogue in any indie game. The second half is slower and more exploratory than the first, which split opinions a bit, but there's no denying the game is bold, clever, and full of personality. Guacamelee 2. Juan Aguacate is back. 7 years after saving the world, he's called out of retirement, when a new threat, a different version of himself from an alternate timeline, starts tearing reality apart by collecting pieces of a golden guacamole. Yes, really, Guacamelee. 2 keeps everything that made the first game great. The luchador combat system where you beat enemies using wrestling moves, the ability to flip between the world of the living and the world of the dead to solve platforming puzzles, and the ridiculous pop culture humor that never stops swinging. The combat actually evolves a lot here, with new stamina-based special moves that chain together into combos and make fights feel more like a fighting game than a brawler. The platforming challenges get genuinely brutal in the later sections, especially the legendary chicken challenges that will test your patience. Blasphemous is not a comfortable game, and that's entirely the point. You play as the Penitent One, a silent penitent warrior who is the sole survivor of a massacre, resurrected by a mysterious miracle to complete a pilgrimage through the cursed land of Custodia. The world here is drenched in Catholic guilt, grotesque imagery, and the kind of grim folklore that feels genuinely unsettling. Combat is deliberate and punishing. You swing your sword, mea culpa, parry attacks, and cast spells. But enemies hit hard, and zones are unforgiving. Boss fights are the highlight, each one visually striking and mechanically demanding. The exploration opens up as you complete 3 major trials to obtain holy wounds that unlock new abilities and new areas. The pixel art is extraordinarily detailed and expressive. Every enemy, every boss, every environment is dripping with dark craftsmanship. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. You're Ori again, the little spirit guardian, and this time you're following a young owl named Ku into a broken, corrupted land that needs to be healed. The story hits harder than you'd expect from how it looks. This game genuinely made people cry. The platforming is incredible, with Ori gaining a sword, a bow, a shield, and various other abilities that make movement feel faster, more fluid, and more satisfying with every new unlock. Moon Studios also added a proper combat system this time. Real enemies, real bosses, real fights, not just the escape sequences from the first game. The world is enormous with towns, side quests, and spirit wellsprings to restore. The hand-painted art style is still one of the most beautiful things on the Switch, and the orchestrated score by Gareth Coker is genuinely moving. Axiom Verge 2. You play as Indra Chowdhury, a billionaire tech CEO who travels to Antarctica to find her missing daughter, and ends up transported to a strange alien world that's somehow connected to our own. The tone is quieter and more contemplative than the first game. Instead of guns, you use a hacking drone to manipulate enemies and the environment, solving puzzles and finding hidden paths by sending it through walls and ventilation shafts. Indra herself moves through the world, climbing and swinging, with traversal feeling more like exploration than combat. The game is structured around multiple interconnected regions, tied together by a lore that touches on consciousness, mythology, and what it means to exist between worlds. It's a slower, weirder experience than most on this list, less focused on action, more on atmosphere and discovery. People call this Sekiro in 2D, and honestly, that's not far off. Nine Souls is set in a Taopunk world that's Taoism meets cyberpunk, where you play as Yi, a Taoist hunter who wakes up from a long slumber and sets out on a revenge mission against the 9 immortal rulers who destroyed his people. The story goes places. It's dark, personal, and emotionally brutal in a way that sneaks up on you. But the real star is the combat. It's built entirely around parrying and deflecting, where you redirect enemy attacks back at them, charge your talismans with deflected energy, and unleash explosive finishing blows that shatter enemies. Every boss fight is a puzzle you solve with your reflexes. The hand-drawn, anime-inspired art is gorgeous, and the world mixes ancient Chinese architecture with glowing neon tech in ways that feel genuinely original. Teslagrad has a mechanic that most other games in this genre don't: magnetism. You play as a young boy who flees into an old tower filled with ancient technology after a mysterious threat appears at your door. Inside the tower, you find a magnetic glove that lets you attract and repel objects, including yourself, and that single mechanic is the foundation of everything in the game. Puzzles, traversal, boss fights, all of it runs through controlling magnetic polarity. Push platforms toward you, launch yourself across gaps, rotate magnetized objects, repel enemies. The game tells its story entirely without words. No text, no dialogue, just gorgeous animated murals on the walls of the tower that reveal the history of a kingdom, a revolution, and a family secret. The art style is dark fairy tale watercolor, absolutely beautiful and distinctive. Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. You play as Sargon, the youngest member of an elite warrior group called the Immortals, who travels to the sacred Mount Qaf to rescue a kidnapped prince. The mountain is cursed with a time loop, and as you explore it, you gain increasingly wild time manipulation powers, rewinding your position, creating an echo of yourself, tearing rifts in space to redirect attacks, shifting between dimensions. The platforming built around these abilities is some of the most inventive in the genre. The combat is fast, fluid, and very precise, with a satisfying parry window and a ton of amulet combinations to customize your build. The map is enormous and well-designed, clearly inspired by Metroid Dread in the best way. The story takes a little while to get going, but builds into something genuinely engaging with solid characters and surprising twists.
In these times of dark...
Salt and Sanctuary. You're a sailor shipwrecked on a cursed island filled with nightmare creatures and long-dead horrors, and survival requires learning enemy patterns, managing stamina, and building the right character around one of many weapon and magic archetypes. When you die, you leave behind your salt. This game's equivalent of Souls, and you have one chance to recover it before it's gone. The RPG system is deep, with branching skill trees that let you go tank, glass cannon, mage, or hybrid. The world is dark and interconnected, with sanctuaries acting as checkpoints where you level up and upgrade gear. Bosses are punishing but learnable, and the world opens up in classic fashion as you gain new traversal abilities. It's not the prettiest game on this list. The art is intentionally rough and moody, but it has atmosphere to spare and one of the most satisfying progression systems around.
As far as attack numbers are concerned. Oops.
Axiom Verge, the original. Tom Happ made this entirely alone art, code, music, design over 5 years, and it's a love letter to Super Metroid that holds up beautifully. You play as Trace, a scientist who wakes up in an alien world after a lab explosion, and quickly realizes this strange place has a deep and disturbing connection to Earth. You explore a massive alien landscape, unlock new weapons, find new abilities, and slowly piece together the truth of what's actually going on. And it goes to some genuinely dark and philosophically interesting places. The glitch gun is one of the most creative weapons in any game in the genre, letting you literally corrupt enemies and certain walls to reveal hidden paths. The world design is intricate, the boss fights are challenging, and the sense of isolation and discovery is as close to Super Metroid as anything released in the past decade. Ender Magnolia is the sequel to Ender Lilies, and it takes everything from that game and polishes it to a higher shine. You play as Lilac, a young girl called an attuner, who wakes up in a ruined industrial world with no memory of who she is. The world is filled with homunculi artificial beings created by humans who have been driven mad by a mysterious toxic mist called the Blight. Lilac can attune to these beings, purify them, and recruit them as allies who fight alongside her in combat. Each homunculus has a unique attack style, and building your loadout from the roster of purified companions is one of the most satisfying parts of the game. Combat is fluid and expressive, with aerial combos, counters, and dodge cancels that give you real control over your fighting style. The map is massive and well designed, marked clearly with what you've cleared and what's still locked off. Cyber Shadow goes back to the 8-bit era of ninja action games and plays like a lost NES classic that somehow got updated with modern precision. You play as Shadow, the last surviving ninja of Clan Archer, who fights through a ruined cyberpunk city to rescue his imprisoned clan and stop the mad scientist who destroyed them. The gameplay is fast and punishing, with tight platforming, precise combat, and a challenge level that demands you get good. You unlock new ninja abilities, a charge slash, a dive kick, a wall climb, a parry, and these build into a satisfying toolkit that makes replaying earlier sections with full movement feel empowering. The bosses are relentless and incredibly well designed, forcing you to use every tool you have. The pixel art is gorgeous, the soundtrack is full of hard-hitting chiptune tracks, and the whole game moves at a pace that feels relentless. Yoku's Island Express. You play as Yoku, a dung beetle who's just arrived on Mokomana Island to take over as postmaster, and the entire island is dotted with pinball flippers, bumpers, and boards that you use to travel. You're physically attached to a ball via a rope, so when you hit a flipper, you go flying. New flippers unlock new areas, new abilities expand how you interact with the pinball mechanics, and the map opens up in full Metroidvania fashion. The tone is warm, sunny, and relentlessly cheerful. This is one of the few games on this list that's genuinely appropriate for all ages and still engaging for adults. The island feels alive, the side quests are entertaining, and finding a new section of flippers and launching yourself through it for the first time is consistently delightful. There's a day/night system that changes which characters are available and what puzzles you can solve. Hollow Knight is the game that defines what an indie Metroidvania can be at its absolute best. You play as a small, silent bug knight who descends into the ruined kingdom of Hallownest, an underground civilization of insects that was destroyed by an ancient plague called the Infection. The world is vast, dark, and full of secrets, with dozens of interconnected zones that gradually reveal themselves as you collect new movement abilities. Combat is nail on nail, with a precise hitbox system that requires you to learn every enemy's pattern. Charms are collectible items that let you customize your playstyle healing builds, aggressive builds, fragile glass cannon setups, and the variety of viable approaches keeps the game fresh across multiple playthroughs. The hand-drawn art is timeless, the music by Christopher Larkin is haunting, and the lore told through conversations, ghost memories, and scattered journals goes incredibly deep if you're willing to seek it out. Before Hollow Knight, before all of it, there was Cave Story. Made by one developer, Daisuke Pixel Amaya, over 5 years and released for free in 2004, it's the game that proved a single person could create a complete, fully realized Metroidvania classic. You play as Quote, a robot who wakes up in an underground cave village with no memory. It slowly uncovers the truth about why he's there and what his past actually is. The gameplay is fast, the weapons are fun and level up as you collect crystals, and the level design is tight and clever. The story deals with themes of memory, sacrifice, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard, and it handles those themes with more sincerity than most games 10 times its budget. Cave Story Plus on Switch is the definitive version with remastered graphics, a new soundtrack option, and extra content. Blasphemous 2 opens with the miracle returning to birth a new god, and the penitent one rises once again to stop it before the cycle of suffering repeats. This time you start with 3 weapons, a whip, a sword, and a pair of fists, and you can switch between them freely, which transforms the combat from the deliberate single sword style of the original into something far more dynamic and expressive. The world is enormous, with all the grotesque Spanish-Italian Renaissance-inspired art elevated to an even higher level. Platforming gets more emphasis this time around, with sections that feel like pure precision tests mixed into the exploration. The Penitent one is more mobile too, more agile, more fluid. Boss fights remain the centerpiece, massive and visually overwhelming encounters that push your mastery of all 3 weapons. The world opens up beautifully with clever shortcuts and satisfying unlocks. Hollow Knight Silksong puts you in control of Hornet, the silk-spinning hunter who was a recurring boss and ally in the original. Hornet's moveset is faster and more acrobatic than the Knight's. She can sprint, perform aerial attacks, use her silk thread for traversal and combat in creative ways, and parry attacks with needle precision. The game is denser and faster than its predecessor, with a huge kingdom to explore across dozens of interconnected zones. Bosses are some of the best Team Cherry has ever designed, demanding technical mastery while still feeling learnable. Farloom is just as full of secrets, lore, and hidden content as Hallownest was possibly more so. The hand-drawn art has evolved, the soundtrack continues the melancholy orchestral tone, and the sheer variety of environments keeps the exploration feeling fresh for the entirety of its runtime. Dead Cells is the roguelite Metroidvania hybrid that proved the 2 genres could merge into something better than either on their own. Every run starts fresh in a procedurally generated version of a dead king's castle, and you fight your way through branching biomes, collecting weapons and scrolls that power you up until you die and start over, keeping only permanent unlocks. The combat is lightning fast, relentlessly satisfying, and built on a weapon synergy system where the right combinations of blades, shields, spells, and traps become greater than the sum of their parts. The biomes shift as you unlock new routes, and the overall structure reveals a hidden narrative about a plague, a king, and a consciousness riding a headless corpse through an endless loop. The game has received years of free and paid DLC, including a crossover with Castlevania that adds entire new bosses and zones directly inspired by Symphony of the Night. Ori and the Blind Forest is a platforming Metroidvania about loss, love, and finding your way home. And it tells that story through one of the most beautiful games ever made. You play as Ori, a small white spirit separated from their guardian Naru after a devastating storm kills the forest's great spirit. To restore the forest and find a way back, Ori must travel through decaying, corrupted zones and restore them one by one. The movement system is extraordinary. Every ability Ori gains feels like an extension of natural motion, from the wall jump to the bash ability that lets you redirect projectiles and enemies for momentum. Some of the precision platforming sections are genuinely intense, particularly the escape sequences that scroll the screen and demand perfect execution. The Definitive Edition adds 2 new zones, additional backstory chapters, and a dash ability that makes Ori feel even more fluid. "25 Metroidvania games that absolutely belong on your Nintendo Switch." Drop a comment with your favorite. Like and subscribe if you want more gaming content, and I'll see you in the next one.